1. The Boy Who Lived. Mr. and Mrs. Dursley of number 4 Prairie Drive were proud to say that they were perfectly normal, thank you very much. They were the last people you would expect to be involved in anything strange and mysterious, because they just sit and hold with such nonsense. Mr. Dursley was director of a firm called Grunnings, which made drills. He was a big, beefy man with hardly any neck, although he did have a very large mustache. Mrs. Dursley was thin, blonde, and had nearly twice the usual amount of neck, which came in very useful as she spent so much of her time cleaning over garden fences, spying on the neighbors. The Dursleys had a small son called Dudley, and in their opinion there was no finer boy anywhere. The Dursleys had everything they wanted, but they also had a secret, and their greatest fear was that somebody would discover it. They didn't think they could bear if anyone found out about the Potters. Mrs. Potter was Mrs. Dursley's sister, but they hadn't met for several years. In fact, Mrs. Dursley pretended that she didn't have a sister because her sister and her good-for-nothing husband were as un-Dursleyish as it was possible to be. The Dursleys shuddered to think what the neighbors would say if the Potters arrived in the street. The Dursleys knew that the Potters had a small son too, but they'd never even seen him. The boy was another good reason for keeping the Potters away. They didn't want Dudley mixing with a child like that. When Mr. and Mrs. Dursley woke up on the dull, gray Tuesday our story starts, there was nothing about the cloudy sky outside to suggest that strange and mysterious thing that should be happening all over the country. Mr. Dursley hummed as he picked out his most boring tie for work, and Mrs. Dursley gossiped away happily as she wrestled a screaming Dudley into his high chair. None of them noticed a large, tawny owl flutter past the window.
A what?
A large, tawny owl.
Owl, okay.
Flutter past the window. At 8:30, the Dursleys picked up his briefcase and picked Mrs. Dursley on the cheek and tried to kiss Dudley goodbye, but missed, because Dudley was now having a tantrum and was throwing his cereal at the walls. Little tyke, chuckled Mr. Dursley. He left the house. He got into his car and backed out of number 4's drive. It was at the corner of the street that he noticed the first sign of something peculiar. A cat reading a map. For a second, Mr. Dursley didn't realize what he had seen. He jerked his head around to look again. There was a tabby cat standing on the corner of Prairie Drive, but there wasn't a map in sight. What could he have been thinking of? It must have been a trick of the light. Mr. Dursley blinked and stared at the cat. It stared back. As Mr. Dursley drove around the corner up the road, he watched the cat in his mirror. It was now reading the sign that said Private Drive. No, looking at the sign. Cats couldn't read maps or signs. Mr. Dursley gave himself a little shake and put the cat out of his mind. He drove towards town with the thought of nothing except a large order of drills he was hoping to get that day. But on the edge of town, drills were driven out of his mind by something else. He sat in the usual morning traffic jam. He couldn't help noticing that there seemed to be a lot of strangely dressed people. People in cloaks. Mr. Dursley couldn't bear people who dressed in funny clothes. The get-ups you saw in young people. He supposed this was some stupid new fashion. He drummed his fingers on the steering wheel, and his eyes fell on a huddle of these weirdos standing quite close by. They were always being excitedly together. Mr. Dursley was enraged to see a couple of them weren't young at all, why that man had to be older than he was, and wearing an emerald green cloak. The nerve of him. But then it struck Mr. Dursley that this was probably some silly stunt. These people were obviously collecting for something. Yes, that would be it. A few moments later, Mr. Dursley arrived at the Grunning's car park, his mind back on drills. Mr. Dursley always sat with his back to the window, the office on the ninth floor. If he hadn't, he might find it hard to concentrate on drills that morning. He didn't see the owls swooping past in broad daylight, though people down the street did. They pointed and gazed, open-mouthed, as owl after owl speeded overhead. Most of them have never even seen an owl, even at nighttime. But Mr. Dursley had a perfectly normal, owl-free morning. He yelled at 5 different people. He made several telephone calls and shouted a bit more. He was in a very good mood until lunchtime, when he thought he might stretch his legs and walked across the road to buy himself a bun from the bakery. He had forgotten all about the people in cloaks until he passed a group of them next to the baker's. He eyed them angrily as he passed. He didn't know why, but they made him uneasy. This thought were whispering excited me too. And he couldn't see a single collecting tin. He was on his way back, clutching a large donut in the bag, when he caught some of the words that they were saying. The Potters? That's right, that's what I heard. Yes, their son, Harry. Mr. Dursley stopped dead. Fear flooded him. He looked back to the whispers as though he wanted to say something to them, but thought better. He dashed back across the road, hurried to his office, snapped at his secretary not to disturb him, and was almost finished dialing his home number when he changed his mind. He put the receiver back down and stroked his mustache, thinking. No, he was being stupid. Potter wasn't an unusual name. He was sure there were lots of people called Potter who had a son called Harry. As a matter of fact, he didn't think his nephew was called Harry. It might have been Harvey or Harold. There was no point in worrying Mrs. Dursley. She always got so upset about any mention of her sister. But all the same, he didn't blame her. If he had a sister like that, but all the same, those people in cloaks. He found it a lot harder to concentrate on drills that afternoon. When he left the building at 5 o'clock, he was still so worried that he walked straight into a man outside the door. Sorry, he grunted as the tiny old man stumbled and almost fell. It was a few seconds before Mr. Dursley realized that the man was wearing a violet cloak. He didn't seem at all upset at being almost knocked to the ground. On the contrary, his face split into a wide grin and said in a squeaky voice that made passers-by stare, "Don't be sorry, my dear sir, for nothing could have kept me today. Rejoice, for you know who is gone at last. Even muggles like yourself should be celebrating this happy, happy day." Then the old man hugged Mr. Dursley in the middle and walked off. Mr. Dursley stood rooted to the spot. He had been hugged by a complete stranger. He had also thought he had been called a muggle whatever that was. He leaped.
He was rattled.
He was rattled and hurried to his car and set off for home, hoping he was imagining things which he had never hoped before because he didn't approve of imagination. He pulled into the driveway of number 4 Privet Drive. The first thing he saw, and it didn't improve his mood, was the tabby cat he spotted that morning, now sitting on his garden wall. He was sure it was the same cat. It had the same markings around its eyes. "Shoo," said Mr. Dursley loudly. The cat didn't move. It just gave him a stern look. Was this normal cat behavior? Mr. Dursley wondered, trying to pull himself together. He let himself into the house. He was still determined not to mention anything to his wife. Mrs. Dursley had a nice, normal day. She told him over dinner about Mrs. Necknor's problems with her daughter and how Dudley had learned a new word.
Shan't. He's like, won't.
Mr. Dursley tried to act normal. When Dudley had been put to bed, he went into the living room just in time to catch the last report on the evening news. And finally, bird watchers have reported the nation's owls have been acting very unusual today. Although normals usually hunt at night and are hardly ever seen during the daylight, there have been huge sightings of these birds flying in every direction since sunrise. Experts are unable to explain why owls have suddenly changed their sleeping patterns. The newsreader allowed himself a grin. Most mysterious. And now over to Jim McGuffin with the weather. Going to be any more showers of owls tonight, Jim? Well, Ted, said the weatherman. I don't know about that, but it's not only the owls that have been acting oddly today. Viewers as far apart as Kent, Yorkshire, and Dudley have been phoning in to tell me that instead of the rain I promised yesterday, there has been a downpour of shooting stars. Perhaps people have been celebrating bonfire night early. Not until next week, folks. But I can promise a wet night tonight. Mr. Dursley sat frozen in his armchair, shooting stars all over Britain. Owls flying in daylight, mysterious people in cloaks all over the place, and a whisper about the Potter.